So we are going to be talking about the heart of the Father's heart. Our text is taken from Luke chapter 15, verse 11, all the way through the parable of the lost son. And Jesus said, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estates. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the young son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and had himself out a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields. And you all know how it ends up. The guy loses everything in wild living, gets to beg, and then an idea came back to him and he said, let me go back to my father. And the father was there waiting for him. And it's that heart of that father that I want to talk about. The loving heart of the father that waits even for the wayward son. When we talk of the heart, for a number of us, the first picture that comes to mind is that of that organ in the body that's responsible for blood saturation. Because it's critical to life. Most of us will measure our lives by testing the pulse to see whether it's still beating, to know that the heart is still beating, to know that the man or the body is still alive. But that's not what the Bible means by the heart. Secondly, sometimes when we talk of heart, we associate it with romantic relationships. Young people or even old people talk of sweetheart, my sweetheart, or mutima gwange. That again is not the Bible. It's not talking about that when it talks about the heart. The heart is a word in Latin. The word heart is transferred as car, and in French, cœur, from which we derive the word corps. So the heart is that which is central to the character and identity of something, without which that something loses its identity and loses its meaning. Biblically, heart refers to the inner core of the human being. And we know that in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, the Bible says, guard your heart, for from it all the issues of life spring. So the heart is the executive center of the human being, where choices are made, where ideas are originated, and where decisions are made. And this heart of God is completely full of love. It only has love and goodness in it, nothing else. And that's what binds the three persons of the Trinity into being one eternal God. It's an unbreakable bond of three hearts working in complete unity to form one God. And it's from this core point of love and of being of one mind, of one heart, that the idea of creating man, because love expresses itself outwardly, the heart of God decided, let us make man in our own image. So we originate as human beings from God's love, from God's heart, which is full of love. So by nature, love can do no other but express itself. To love is to invest one's will or one's heart into the good of another person at a personal cost. So that's why it's not correct for people to say, I love chocolate. Because when you love something like chocolate and then eat it, you are not investing its good, your will into its good. You want to destroy it by eating it. For God so loved the world that he gave. That's the heart of love. Greater love than this has no man, that he lays down his life for another. That is the heart of love. The act of creating man was an act of God's heart of extending himself out in love to us. So, God's original plan in creation was to create an all-inclusive community of loving persons, with God himself included in that community as its prime sustainer and most glorious inhabitants. This is the heart of God. God extending himself, creating another being with whom we can share his love and share the being's love. That is the heart of love. And that was in the beginning. We also see at the end of history, in Revelation chapter 21, verse 2 to 5, that God again reconstitutes this unity, this community of love, when we read that the dwelling place of God now dwells among men. So, with that in mind, you can now understand why God is acting in history on earth, on the planet Earth, in reconstituting that community by sending us out in love to be his agents in bringing others to himself. So the Father longingly waits for when all his children will come home. The parable of the prodigal son, or the lost son, the prodigal father, illustrates this very well. The son says to the father, "Give me my share. I want to set off and live in a distant land." And the father lets him be, because love is not coercive by nature. Love is not forcible. Love expects to be comparing by virtue of the goodness it has. Therein lies the basis of free will. The moment when the father grants his son his share and lets him go away, that is love in action. God will not violate your free will. He will let you choose, and then will let you bear the consequences of that choice, and still he will love you. That moment has its prototype in the garden when Adam and Eve chose to eat the fruit. God let them be, but he still loved them. You remember, he goes after them, gives them skin to dress up, and follows all this up to this point when he sends his son in love to correct us back home. Moments like this, when the son goes away, are played out millions of times every day. When people like you and me choose our desires over God's will, when we choose the good without the God, when we choose to step over and out of God's set boundaries, so we can go out and to a distant land and enjoy the fun and freedom, that is God letting us in love to do what we want, but still longingly leaves us and waits for us. But for the son, a moment came in his life when the wealth was gone, the friends were gone, famine in the land, opportunities were scarce, and there was a sense of need biting. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the father was waiting. When the son came to his senses, he told to himself a lie. He said, "I will be accepted if only I can go and ask him for forgiveness and ask him to work for him as a laborer." That is performance-based acceptance. That's not the way of God. When he loves us fully. He doesn't love our performance. He loves our hearts to be reunited with him. The younger son's strategy of offering himself as a laborer was performance-based, which was an gross underestimation of God's love for him. Let's see what happens. He returns, he walks, and the father runs to meet him. Not only does he run, he hugs him. The son is dirty, he's smelly, he's sweaty, He's disabled. The father still hugs him before he tells him to go and bathe. And there's more. There's total restoration. He gives him a robe. He says, bring the best robe, put it on him. A robe was a sign of honor and authority. So he's moving him from guilt and shame to honor and authority. He gives him a ring. Bring the ring, put it on his fingers. A ring was authenticating his identity, saying, this is my son. And he gives him sandals to put on his feet, because only slaves and servants would go barefoot. This is my son, he has to have sandals. He can't go around like a slave. Not only was he forgiven, the young son, but he was also fully restored in the position of a son in the family. That is the father's heart. Nothing you can do can increase God's love for you. Nothing that you can do can decrease God's Father for you. The Lord loves you and is waiting for to restore you fully in his community of loving fellowship.